Rolling right along here on the Ostrom Avenue podcast, Johnny Gadamowitz, Ethan Frank, now joined by Vincent Lococo, a co-host of the From the Pink Seats podcast on Louisville football, a former Louisville football player himself from 2015 to 2018, and even a Louisville coaching staff member under Scott Satterfield in 2019 and 2020. Vincent, that's quite the resume. First of all, how you doing today? Thanks so much for coming on.
You guys really have a way of hyping it up, but I'm doing well. I appreciate it. Appreciate y'all having me on, and looking forward to talking some ball. Happy it's game week.
We certainly try. We're glad to have you on board. Here we are, week one. It seems like the countdown has been going. The nerves have certainly been there, but Saturday we get to find out what the product on the field is going to look like from both a Syracuse standpoint and a Louisville standpoint. Mention you're a former player. What is it like for those guys going through the summer, going through camp, going through the workouts to ultimately suit up and be ready to rock and roll for game number one?
Summer around this time, I mean, you're hitting the end of camp, kind of start of school year type of vibes. So things actually kind of start to pick up a little bit at practice to get a little bit more physical, a little bit more antsy. You want to start hitting some people, other than the teammates, same guys you've been seeing every day. So, other than that, you're watching film, doing your normal workouts, getting ready for school, like I said, and just really starting to hone in on that game one because it can set the tone for your entire year.
You mentioned hitting people. Louisville hit Syracuse pretty hard last November, 41-3, the Cardinals over the Orange. How much do you think last year's matchup plays into what we might see on Saturday, this time in Syracuse?
I don't think it plays that much into it. It's the start of the season, first game of the year. Anything can happen. Both teams are coming into it fairly healthy. So really anything can happen. With Louisville in particular, we're replacing a lot of pieces. Although I do like the pieces that we added through the transfer portal and some of these freshmen that came in with this past class. But that's kind of, there's nothing really, different, I guess.
I want to dig a little further there before we take too deep of a dive into some of the pieces that we'll be seeing on the field Saturday, because you rewind to 1 year before that, you go back to 2020, 30-0 shutout. You're looking at a combined score of the last 2 years of 71-3, if I did my math right and carried my ones correctly. Is there something about it just from a mental standpoint going up against a squad? I know you said obviously it's a new year and a clean slate, but you just see that other team on the sideline, you've had the upper hand. Does that sort of kick in and give you that extra motivation, or is it more like you alluded to earlier?
Well, kind of like what I alluded to earlier. I mean, with you guys, it's an ACC opponent. A lot of teams open up with some FCS squads or, maybe a really, really, really big game. But, for us, this is a huge game for the ACC. It could set the tone for the entire conference. One of us is going to end up starting out 1-0 in conference play. So that's going to look real pretty going into game two.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a little bit of a big picture view here of the Louisville coaching staff. You're obviously a former player, as we talked about, and a former staff member as well. So from when the time you started playing to where the program is now, what have you seen changed or improved over that time span?
Well, I came into Louisville at 2016, and that was Lamar's Heisman season. The year he did the leap against Syracuse in the Dome and all that cool stuff went on. And so lots changed really since then. We went from that to 2-10 in 2018. So as high as you can go and as low as you can go. And then let me think. From there, we had Sat and them come in, and I had an ACL injury from 18 to 19. So that's kind of why I transitioned into that staffer role. But what's changed, I've got to say, the locker room environment. People are really bought in on winning and the team. What else has changed? Just the complete vibes. It's more of a family up there. It's not so much of a job or a chore to go up and do football.
Last year, a bit of an interesting one for the Cardinals. They lose 4 out of their final 6 games, and obviously it ended with a little bit of a sour taste in Louisville fans' mouth with, the shellacking at the hands of Kentucky and then a loss, obviously, in the bowl game to Air Force. Although maybe a little bit better than that record suggests, 4 of those 7 losses on the year by 6 points or fewer. Was there a sense surrounding this program that this was a team that was really knocking on the door and just a couple plays, a couple misfortunes away from
Yep.
a very different year?
That was our head coach's, kind of theme throughout the year was we're 1 or 2 plays away. And no fan base likes to hear that, but myself knowing these guys and, knowing the offense a little bit more, knowing the defense a little bit more, they truly were 1 or 2 plays away. You go to the Clemson game for reference, we had 4 plays at the goal line to beat these guys. And I mean, we're right there. And if one guy does one thing different on each one of those plays, it's literally 1 to 2 guys not doing their job or 1 to 2 guys getting beat. We beat Clemson for the first time in the history since we moved into the ACC. So, us, Louisville, we were 1 or 2 plays away. And it sucks to say because no fan enjoys hearing that whenever their coach says it.
You look at this Louisville team, and they presented a lot of problems for Syracuse last year, as we've talked about. Who's someone that Orange fans should keep an eye on as to who might have a big impact that isn't one of the obvious names like a Malik Cunningham or a Yasir Abdullah, someone maybe a little bit under the radar?
Well, offensively, we brought in Tyler Hudson, who I believe he's transferring up from an FCS team. I've been to several practices since he's been on campus, and he looks phenomenal. If you guys remember Des Fitzpatrick for us a couple years ago, Malik Cunningham's compared him a lot to him. We have added Tyon Evans, running back transfer out of Tennessee, who is a lot like Jalen Mitchell, the running back we already have, but with a lot more speed. He's just got that SEC, kick in him where it's going to take 1 to 2 guys to bring him down. He's an agile guy. Defensively, we have Kendrick Duncan, who's a safety, big safety, about 6'2", 200 plus pounds, who we can bring down in the box and is very good in coverage as well. And then you've got Cottrell Clark, who plays corner. He's an all-conference kind of guy for us, and Ashton Gelati as well, who was the freshman last year, drew a lot of praise, and we expect big things out of him as a sophomore this year.
Let's hit on Malik. Obviously, one of the bigger superstars that the conference really has to offer. Ran for over 1,000 yards, 20 scores, threw for close to 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns. You can rattle off numbers all day long, but what is it about Mr. Cunningham that makes him so dynamic? And if you're an opposing team trying to neutralize him defensively, what is the game plan to do that if there is one?
The best way to beat Malik would probably be to get pressure on him, make him throw on the run, creates an unsettling pocket for him. He doesn't do well throwing the deep ball with hands in his face and things like that. But the thing that just makes him special is, I don't know, I guess that 1 year learning under Lamar and knowing Lamar for so long, the two of them with such similar games, they get to communicate very often via text message. So, but what makes him special as well is just his dedication to his craft. He just said today in an interview that he only took 2 weeks after we lost to Air Force, and he was right back at it. Everybody's been saying he's throwing on Saturdays in the off season with the wide receivers. He's throwing, midweek with the wide receivers. So just trying to get that chemistry with our guys. We expect big things from him this year, and the offense kind of goes as Malik goes.
Yeah, you mentioned his relationship with Lamar. It feels like Lamar and Malik have been torching Syracuse for the past, half dozen years or so now. How much of a privilege really has it been to be able to watch these two guys play quarterback for the Cardinals for, the past handful, however many years it is?
Being around Lamar, we'll start out with him. He was just as good of a person off the field as he is on the field. He's the kind of guy that you would hang out with, just goofy dude, but serious whenever he needed to be. Malik's a lot like him, very similar, goofy, but serious when he needs to be. And I'm very, very extremely fortunate to have been around the both of them. Just being able to watch Lamar as a true freshman and a sophomore, uh, kind of excel, Heisman Trophy winner, and then, put up just as good of numbers in 2017. Kind of got snubbed in my opinion, but I mean, I might be biased. But the cool thing with Malik is watching him come in as a freshman and watching his growth as a leader, coming in extremely immature and then growing into somebody now that you see on ACC Media Day, and you're like, that guy right there can lead a football team.
Just how interesting has it been to sort of watch these offenses develop and flourish over the years where their primary option running the ball is the quarterback? I mean, that's no discredit to the backs that the Cardinals have had the past few years, but I think it's safe to say that, their primary option on the ground for the better part of the past 4 or 5 years is the quarterback. Just how unique has that been to sort of experience, and how has that philosophy sort of evolved for Louisville as time has gone on?
It's crazy you mentioned that, because, I mean, Javian Hawkins in 2019 was the first running back to go for 1,000 yards since like 2009 or something. So it had been a number of years before we had a running back go for over 1,000. And, to have Malik and Lamar be able to do that, it's odd that you have to rely on your running back. It's very worrisome. I mean, not at practice, because you can't really touch them at practice or anything like that. But during the game, it'd be the slightest hit on Lamar or Malik, and I'm like, oh God, like, is he going to get up? Like, please get up or slide or do something other than just take that hit and try and get that extra yard.
So I can't help but notice your hat that says pulling linemen and fullbacks 24. So someone on Syracuse who loves to run behind pulling linemen and fullbacks would be Sean Tucker, one of the best running backs in the entire nation. And he was mainly neutralized against Louisville last season. He ran for almost 1,500 yards, a Syracuse program record. How were the Cardinals able to be so successful last year? And do you see something similar playing out on Saturday?
What I saw, I just got done watching the game, watched the first half on Sunday, watched the second half today, and it seemed like we brought Kendrick Duncan down into the box more. I mentioned that big safety we had. He had a lot of TFLs. I know he at least had 2 that I was really paying attention to, and I'm sure he had more, but I think adding that extra DB almost as a linebacker for us in that 3-4 defense helps us to kind of contain him and be able to shoot gaps. And at the same time, Brian Brown, our defensive coordinator, does a phenomenal job with gaming or adding twists to our defensive line. A lot of things like they like to call them ETs. So the end goes first, tackle will wrap around behind him, or, vice versa, TE, which tackle first and behind him. So he does a lot of things like that. He likes to get creative and bring some pressure from the inside and outside. And I think that might have been how they neutralized him, but he's a phenomenal running back that worries the hell out of me.
Outside of Tucker, is there anyone, when looking up and down the SU depth chart, that really jumps off the page that could present some matchup problems for this Cardinals defense come this weekend?
The quarterback play. I mean, your all's quarterback is just, the best way to kind of describe him, in my opinion, is a dog. He's got that it factor in him. He's you can tell he's a great leader, and he can just almost command your team into a win, which is kind of something that you want to see in a quarterback.
Yeah, you mentioned Garrett Schrader. It's interesting because he comes in the middle of last season. He takes over for Tommy DeVito, who we just saw play for Illinois, and the quarterback carousel keeps moving on. It seems like Schrader wants to be what Malik Cunningham is and how much he's able to run the ball. But Syracuse brings in a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach, ones that threw the ball all over the field and didn't have the quarterback running as much. So I think a really interesting matchup will be the Syracuse passing game against the Louisville pass defense, or the secondary. What do you see in that aspect for the Cardinals, how they would be able to hold up in that regard?
You guys brought in the Virginia offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, Virginia, they have a phenomenal passing game, and that does not play well into what Louisville's defense has done in the past 2 years under Brian Brown. We've really struggled with rushing 3 and dropping 8 on, obvious passing downs. In a team like Virginia, especially last year, they're just going to pick you apart in a zone defense. Their guys just do a great job of finding the gaps. working the space and getting on the same page with their quarterback. And I kind of expect a lot of that out of Syracuse this coming fall.
We spoke about it a bit earlier, but you talked about how an opener against an ACC squad really is a big deal. Somebody's starting 1-0, somebody's starting 0-1. What do you remember about those conference games from your playing days, just in terms of a mindset, a mentality of how you might approach these big games a little bit differently than, say, the non-con games, particularly when it's this early on in the season?
Well, you always it brings a greater focus on everything. You could lose, you could blow your first 3 non-conference games or whatever and still be all right in conference play, make it to the conference championship. You win that, everybody says you have a good year. So, that's kind of the focus on the conference play. And it just makes you dial in a whole nother level because it means that much more. And you have to win your conference games in order to make it or even get a snip at the playoffs. It's going to be hard for anybody outside of Clemson and the ACC to make an argument to get in there for the playoffs.
Absolutely. So let's take a closer look at the matchup. I got a couple of fill in the blank questions for you. Let's start with Louisville, and it's pretty simple. Louisville wins on Saturday if.
Louisville wins on Saturday if we establish the run game. And that's kind of where we set up our play action pass last year and got you all on a lot of big plays, deep shots downfield to Tyler Harrell, who, just transferred off to Alabama. But, I'm fairly confident in the kid, Tyler Hudson, who we just added to fill that role. And at the same time, we have Amari Huggins-Bruce, who's back this year playing that inside slot receiver spot that Tutu Atwell excelled at. In 2019, they're 2 very similar players. You can't match Tutu's speed, but Amari's, close to it. But those are the 2 things offensively we have to do. Defensively, I believe if we can shut down the run game with you guys, we got a pretty good shot at winning the game. But we'll have to see with the new offensive coordinator what kind of wrinkles he's going to bring in. Just that Virginia offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. It's definitely given me fits over the years.
Absolutely. And then the same goes for Syracuse. Syracuse wins on Saturday if.
Syracuse wins on Saturday if, let me see. They have to get Louisville's offense to play behind the chains. So if they can get Louisville's offense to play behind the chains, it's not built to have success that way. We're a run-first football team, and if you force Malik Cunningham to throw the ball, get pressure in his face, odds are you're probably going to have success there. Offensively with Syracuse, it's find those zones in the defense. If Louisville starts running that drop 8, rush 3, drop 8, then just start finding the holes in the defense, having guys spot up, and it's going to turn into pitch and catch.
Vincent, I know it's week 1. I know it's early. I know there's a lot of questions to be answered and things still to be determined, but could we trouble you for a potential prediction to see how this one might shake out come this weekend?
Well, I didn't think of a score. I think we'll win for sure. I'm sorry, guys. I think Malik Cunningham might be a little too much this go around again. Hopefully you guys get rid of him and Lamar Jackson frets and memories and things like that after this season. But I think he'll have a big game alongside with Tyon Evans. Hopefully we can shut down the run game and this Virginia offensive coordinator doesn't mess with our heads too much with his extremely good passing game.
Well, if the last 2 years serve as any track record, Cunningham and the Cardinals certainly appear to be in a good spot, but it's a new year.
Well, so it was the Lamar Jackson game last year too. So you got to throw that in there. We can't
get rid of the guy. We
can't lose that one. Of course, we're going to do it on that day.
Well, Vincent, this was great. Can't thank you enough for hopping on. That's Vincent Lococo, a co-host of the From the Pink Seats podcast. Be sure to check them out. Former Louisville player, former Louisville staffer as well, breaking down everything we need to know about Syracuse and Louisville coming up week 1 this week.